for Kitesy Gaming. It's our red Zerg player. This is Solar.
And in the top right from Dragon Phoenix Gaming, of course, is going to be your blue Terran. His name is Cure. And you know what I need, Rushi?
What do you need?
I need a cure to all of this Zerg winning tournaments.
Wait, you need a cure for that? I mean, that sounds like a wonderful experience. I mean, it sounds like normal experience, right? Oh man, you can tell which one of us is the Zerg player and which one of us is the Terran player. Good grief.
Gosh. Caster bias. What is this? But yeah, it's been interesting. You know, we've had, of course, a full week of watching ESL and all the other regions and seeing how those players have done, and it's been interesting to see those developments, and then now getting the dichotomy of watching that and coming here and watching the GSL qualifiers and saying, all right, well, what players are doing well, what players are maybe not doing as well, what is the general strategies and play styles that we're going to see pulled out. And of course, I think in this group A, you're probably not going to see too much. I mean, Cure, Solar, you know, these are very, very standard players. On the lower side of the bracket, I believe you have Gumiho as well. You know, it's just, there's going to be a lot of very straight up macro play in this group, but as soon as we get into something like Group B losers, Group B winners, and we start seeing, you know, some of those players like Hero, maybe start seeing a Ryung, you'll see Astrea, I think that's when maybe we'll start to see a bit more variety in the build orders.
Well, until we get that variety, I guess we'll get a little bit of, you know, normal looking stuff here. It is just going to be a standard command center expand for Cure. Solar picking up his third base once again. We do have the ever loved dance between the Reapers and the Queens here. Driving the Queens a little bit far off of creep, but I think we'll just have to get an idea of where Cure wants to go with game number 1, as he is going to dial things up, and he does take the early command center, so giving us a little bit of an indication that we won't see anything incredibly cheeky right out of the gate. May want to look for a little bit longer form game.
Yeah, and I mean, Cure isn't the type of player to go, you know, 3 base, 8 racks, pseudo all in. He doesn't really do that. He'll apply pressure, but he'll get into a 4th, and he'll get into a fairly standard macro game from there. So I expect this to be fairly straight up in terms of the kind of the way that Cure is going to take this game and grabbing his third. Of course, he's getting a Viking out here to clear out the singular Overlord that is across the map, and then fly that over and try and maybe pick off a few others, but he's continuing with the Hellion production. Eventually, he's going to start up that stim pack, add on more barracks, get your engineering bays, additional gas, and overall, it will probably just look very, very, you know, consistent with what we know the usual Terran play is I do like that little move. You know, just making Solar second guess, lifts up the barracks and says, well, maybe I swap my starport onto that, or perhaps was going to swap the barracks off and then decided against it. We may never know what's going on inside of Cure's head.
Yeah, actually, I was going to make a comment about that as well, because it's a lack of a tech lab on the starport that gives us a very interesting indication from our perspective that it's not going to be Cloak Banshee, it's not going to be anything too wild out of the gate. Will be a Liberator, though, so still something that Cure is going to be able to use on the opposite side of the map. But to your comment as well, it's all about the mind games now. Does Solar know that it is going to end up being a stim pack timing here for the barracks? Is it going to be Cloak Banshee? He doesn't know. He's going to have to find out. But I think the sighting of the Liberator is going to help make that a little bit more apparent and should give Solar at least a little bit of a choice in how he wants to move forward.
Yeah. Viking does get a little bit low, and the Hellions have found their way in a bit of an awkward position here, stuck here between 2 bases, some Queens, and the Zerglings should be able to find their way out, though. Just run on in and say, oh, hi, everybody. Ooh, snipes 3 drones there. He's going to be able to get 3 more. He's managed to get out with a good chunk of those Hellions, so a nice little push there from Cure is going to be able to find some damage. Like I said, as soon as that Liberator comes out, the Zerg should know what is happening, and the Liberator did end up going down. I don't think they actually found that much value. The 9 drones that have gone down, mostly from those Hellions. But the stim bag is almost finished. You have 3 racks. It's going to be going up to 5 on these 3 bases. And I said, you know, we're not going to see Cure go up to 8 racks. Well, this 5 racks, it's very, very early. It's going to be with the stim. So he's going to be looking to put on that at least fairly aggressive pressure. But it's nothing that's super all in, nothing that's super committed.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the important part here, to recognize that there isn't an overreaction one way or the other. But both players still hanging really, really close to each other in the supply count here. It's 107 to 103. Cure actually with a slight lead. And I think the worker count just a little bit closer than Solar probably is going to want that to be. I mean, his lair just finishes up. He is picking up a couple of bases here, getting his 4th base, getting a macro hatchery up in the main, which seems a little bit interesting here, as he is still trying to stabilize just on a normal 3-base economy, as this Bioforce here is starting to sneak in on the right-hand side. This is a sizable amount of Marines, and the banelings aren't quite done just yet. Centrifugal hooks not quite on the menu. They are in the production tab, but it's going to be a little while before that is allowed to finish. But +1/+1, I think is going to be a better tool that Solar can use to at least help defend the fort.
As the Marines push in, they do manage to snipe off a few of those group timbers, so the Queens will have to expend energy replacing those, but overall Cure hasn't really been able to find too much damage up until this point. The 1-1 will be finishing soon. The armory is in time so that he can go straight into his two upgrades for his Marines and Marauders, which I imagine he would add on eventually. As for Solar, I mean, this is what Zerg loves. You get a macro hatchery, you're on 4 bases with no issue. A 5th will eventually come down. He's actually going to head into those Hydras. So it's going to be the Lurkers that will be on the docket for our Zerg player. And of course, on 2,000 atmospheres, the Lurkers are still very good. Yes, they got nerfed a little bit. They don't burrow as quickly. You can't be as aggressive with them, where you're able to just run into your opponent's base, burrow so quickly that they can't respond, and then blow up their army. That's no longer really viable, but the unit's still very, very strong defensively, and for a player like Solar, who loves to sit back, absorb all the offense, and then suddenly run over you with just a larger army after you've expended all your resources, it's a very, very good unit.
Well, this is a decent amount of damage that Cure is getting done right now, but look at this Viking. I mean, this Viking doesn't have a whole lot of kills, but it has just caused so much chaos here for Solar. He's going to be able to finally pick that off and hopefully be able to say good riddance to that type of engagement. Really nice wraparound with those Lings to try and box in the Marines, but Medevac's still able to assault from the air, and they do get a nice lift off and away. But Cure's starting to queue up a decent amount of harassment across the map. I mean, he's got a hit squad here on the left. He's got a pretty decent hit squad on the center. This on the right is not quite as big, but Cure's got a lot of different angles to try and poke in from, and I think he's going to start taking advantage of it as Solar, has to cancel that 5th base. He doesn't want to overextend, as he is going to need some additional units here.
Yep, and I mean, it was really nice there. Cure gets the reinforcements just in time, as pickup has to come through. Widowmine shots altogether not going to find that much value, and Cure is going to drop down to kill that drone, make sure that it can immediately place the 5th. There's more Baneley connections. Widowmine hits this time do clear up a lot of the Zerg, but Cure is going to be pushed back for now, and that means that your Hydras are now in production. The Lurker Den is on the way. The one issue for Solar is that you're on 4 bases, and as the Zerg, when you're sitting 82 workers for your opponent and you're only at 81, you're not going to be really happy about your chances if you go into a macro game, as again, Cure just finds a decent trade with the 1/1 bio, eventually picks it up when their health starts to get low, and of course, when you have that 2/2 Ling Bane, Solar is just so good at getting those upgrades in time, and this might just be another cancel on the 5th, which hurts so much for Solar.
I mean, he really wants to get that secured, but he's having a difficult time, and it seems like Cure is always in the right place at the right time. Speaking of right place at the right time, giant hits with those mines. The production here is starting to take off in a good way for Cure. Cure able to cancel yet another 5th base here in the lower right-hand corner. Ghost Academy has been allowed to finish up here, +2, or 2/2 rather, is getting finished up. But look at that. There's a nuke on the agenda here for Cure. He's going to start getting incredibly harassment focused here as the personal cloaking device is going to be researched, and then it will be nukes on the way, but the command center count cannot be high enough here, Titan. He's working to make that number even bigger.
Yeah, and I love this from Cure. I mean, his late game is always impeccable. No, oh my, not Solar, protect your 5th base. That is the 4th time that has gone down. This time it was just a straight up kill, not even a cancel. Of course, Cure has been managing this multi-pronged harassment incredibly well. I mean, almost flawlessly. He's been able to just weave in and out of vision and find ways in to just be able to snipe these bases. But even with that, Solar, it just feels like he should at least have something there to protect it. Now he's going to try and clean up this left flank. Should be able to find a good trade, and he's going to be able to clean most of it up. You see Cure's supply just dropped. Also, the medevacs on the other side of the map, on the right flank, are caught as well. Excuse me, and completely cleaned up.
Yeah, this ends up being a really good moment for Solar to try and push back. Does manage to get a lot of pressure on the right-hand side, but it's going to be the left-hand side that comes in with the additional aggression. Viper's very far forward here. Doesn't want to afford... He can't afford to lose those, so he doesn't want to lose them. But it seems like Solar's finally starting to get the grip on this game that he wants. The first nuke in production right now at the Ghost Academy. How many ghosts do we even have on the map right now? We do have 4, so a decent amount starting to take shape here, and I imagine that they're going to start charging up their cloaking devices and go out on a mission to try and see what bases they can snipe.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, you do have those adaptive talents finishing up for Solar, so you're going to have the lurkers available, and they are going to, I assume, get into production fairly shortly. It'll take a little bit before we're going to have a massive swell of them, but would like to see him defensively as the 5th base has finally been established. It has taken so many tries, but here it is, the 6th as well. He's going to be getting up, and a 7th Solar. Now that he finally has some space on the map, starting to explode up in that base count. But at the same time, Cure, as I said, has so many command centers, has just established a 5th, and because he's been able to find so much success with his double-pronged aggression, he really has no issue getting into this additional higher base count, getting to the Ghosts. The tanks already has +2 on the way, and now look at that nuke time with the Ghosts. It looks like Solar has managed to scout that out, and how pro players are that good with knowing where Ghosts are, I have no idea.
See, for me, I always, I mean, everybody looks at the little red dot, but I always listen for the little nuke sound that comes up. Oh, that one mine just getting so many lings. The second mine gets 7. I wish I could see what that first mine secured, because it would definitely more than 7. But yeah, the amount of little tiny tasks that these pro players are able to do in just an absolute split second is, like you said, it's just incredible to watch. It's super fun to see unfold. Nice little parasitic bomb here to separate up these medevacs, make them a little less effective. The ghost count, though, is starting to look very, very healthy for Cure, which is going to make this difficult for Solar to try and engage into. This 10 ghosts total. And it's going to end up being a lot of snipes and a lot of energy for more nukes and maybe a little bit more covert ops going forward.
Yeah, doesn't look like they have any more nukes in production right now, as Cure has to be careful, just pull back the Marines, so the Marauder's going to tank up most of the damage as he's retreating back into his tank line. And Solar, I don't know if this is the fight you want to take. We'll finally get a good Baneling connection, though. Does still have to back on up, as Cure is looking to try and take a 6th base. Continued tank production is only sitting right now at, or has 3 factories, so that's good. But is using it for some Widowmine at the same time, so only has 2 tanks being produced at once. Has the +3 vehicle weapons on the way, and once that completes, of course, these tanks, they do a whole lot of damage. You've actually seen Solar, this is kind of his patented style, where he has the Lurker Den. He's ready for that transition, but he's not going to do it until he's sure that it's the best moment. He's going to keep on the Slingbane. He's going to keep attacking because he knows that his opponent has already transitioned to Ghosts and Tanks, so if he can find an opening, he can potentially overwhelm Cure, and that's what he's going to look for now. The Banelings are going to start to roll through. The tanks are all gone. The Ghosts just have to retreat. Widowmines do manage to burrow, but they get blown up, and now the Planetary is going to be the target. I don't know if there's quite enough Banelings left. Instead, going to go for that mineral line. You've ended up killing quite a few SCVs, actually 14 in total, having gone down this game. But overall, not the best trade there for Solar. You can see what the idea was, just not really working out as he would like.
Yeah, this was a nice little choice there at the very, very end for Solar, instead of going just directly for the planetary, picking up some of the workers, which made that a little bit better of an exchange. Picking up some tanks, that's very good. Trading tanks for lings, you can, as the Zerg player, be happy with that exchange any day of the week. But I think reality is it's going to be those ghosts. There's 14 ghosts. We're starting to hit a critical mass here for Cure, where Cure's going to be able to feel really confident trying to engage into just about any kind of army that Solar can feasibly try to throw at him. But I like your observation on the lurker tech. I mean, he does have the opportunity to make lurkers happen, but is waiting as long as humanly possible. Now, there's a Nidus network as well, and I think that would be a great way to couple those lurkers, but hold on to that thought here. Lings pushing on forward, getting on top of the tanks. Banelings come in from the right-hand side, but don't quite do the cleanup that they absolutely need to shut everything down, so that ends up evening out the army supply here, but that's going to completely expose the base in the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah, this should be a base kill. I mean, the Ghost control from Cure this game has actually been pretty impeccable. Being able to pull them back whenever the Banelings roll through, just enough so they can start to find the trades with them. The tanks are now going to push on forward. Mind you, these tanks, they're still going to have that +3. It's not done quite yet. It's a nice drag there on the Widowmine shot, but still, just the Zerglings, not good enough. They actually don't even have the adrenal glands, and that means that Solar is not going to be able to find a win in this game. Taps out as Cure is able to find the power push. He's going to get himself up 1-0 in this series. You know something interesting, Rushi?
Yeah, tell me.
I never thought I would say this, but I have been doing so much talking recently that I think I'm starting to feel it.
Really?
You know? Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what you feel the most.
So, interestingly enough, I have not gotten my wisdom teeth out yet. And so,
Really?
when I do a lot of talking, and I mean like multiple days in a row, sometimes, you know, or a really intense cast, sometimes I'll start to feel a little bit of aching back there in those boys. You know, they're just like, hey, we're still here, and we're just a little bit annoying. But you don't have health insurance.
Oh. Man, that's where I feel insanely lucky. Like, I had the opportunity to get those removed while I was still a kid, but I know that that's not like a privilege that everyone gets the opportunity to experience. So that's it. It's also interesting. Like, I'm a musician and a teacher for that matter. So for me, I feel like I've had lots and lots of years of like vocal training and being able to talk for long periods of time, sing, perform, play my instrument. So I've had people talk to me in the past, like, Rushi, how do you do it? How do you manage to go for like long periods of time and then not really feel that winded? And I just kind of look at him and I was like, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, this has just always been me. Like, I've just known this from an early age. So I will say very, very privileged opportunities for me, but I definitely feel you. Casting and talking in general with a lot of excitement, not that easy. You make it look easy, but it's definitely a challenge that you have to overcome.
Yep, absolutely is. Look at that. This is the upside of course, doing replays, as we see that Solar cause for the pause. It's sorry, yo, because we all know that Solar is the hippest of Korean pros. And I say that like half joking, also half not. Solar is just pretty darn cool. But we don't have to deal with that. We just get to continue on like nothing happened, and we can keep talking about this game and about, well, maybe we shouldn't talk about the game because it's the exact same opening as the last one. This is copy and pasted, just a different map.
Yeah, it's true. That's very true. I've always had an admiration for Solar. Like you mentioned, he's one of the hipper people in the community. I would be willing to agree with that. He's like one of the first Koreans that I remember would give an interview in English. That was something that always struck me as kind of cool, because there was always the Korean players that had to have the interpreter, and that's great. Like, there's nothing wrong with that in any way, shape, or form. But for Solar to come out after playing a game and give a interview in a second language for him, I think that's really fascinating and cool, and that's always kind of stuck with me as the kind of person that Solar is.
As we do see, a singular drone is going to go down, and so far has been a flawless game from Cure. 4 minutes in, no resources lost. He's even going to be able to get, of course, the freebie Overlord that every Zerg sacrifices. In order to know what the heck is going on across the map, Solar sees the 3rd CC and says, oh, so there was nothing crazy going on. I am shocked, Cure. You're playing standard? To which Cure obviously just kind of looked very serious and nodded his head.
Oh,
I don't know why I don't know why I have like, you know, it's this weird thing. Whereas I don't know if this is just like as a caster or just anybody who watches StarCraft 2. When I think of a pro, I always have like a certain image of them in my head, even though I know that's probably not how they are at all in person.
Right. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying with that. I mean, everybody's got a persona, right? They've got their game face. Some people are just really bubbly, positive all the time. You've got like the Serals who, anytime they're in a performance mode, absolutely just like super focused, can't be bothered by anything or anyone, and then have a chance to open up like when you see him at Home Story Cup. But this is a lot of damage here. Hellions finding a decent amount of creep spread to push back. The Queens do keep a couple of transfuses going, so not going to be anything in the lost category for units. But the reality is that Cure is just trying to keep Solar back on his heels and just working really hard to find any possible opening where those Hellions might be able to squeak on through. But seems like Solar doing an okay job of defending that, at least for the time being. It is going to be a Baneling Nest on the back front of this for Solar, and it is going to be lair timing as well. Could be a possible Mutiling Bane push here in game number 2.
Yeah, and Glittering Ashes is the premier map for Mutiling Bane. There is so much area to cover. It's such a large map, and so, hey, why not get some Mutalisk boys that can just fly across it very, very quickly, and you don't have to really worry about that travel distance, especially with the speed of the Zerglings. You have a very mobile army suddenly as the Zerg on a map that is, I mean, I think one of the largest, if not the largest in the pool. Is this Liberator is going to be able to find some value. 3 drones already go down. You even get a 4th, and hey, for a single Liberator, that's pretty worthwhile. You do want to try and keep it alive, though. Cure, there we go, is going to be able to respond in time. And again, so far, it's been a very, very good opening for Cure. Keeping the creep spread back, I think that was really something he did amazingly well in the last game on 2000 Atmospheres. If you're looking at why Solar really wasn't able to defend a lot of his 5th bases, he just didn't have creep there. It was completely blind outside of the 5th base locations, and so he was never completely sure when Cure was going to be able to push in. And then with the double-pronged micro as well, it just ended up being a snowballing effect for the Terran.
Well, this is kind of an interesting ploy here. We are seeing an armory go down alongside a additional factory. More than likely going to be additional tank or mine production. But we'll want to keep an eye on that as 1-1 about to finish up. Cure just getting a little bit more here and there with the creep spread. This Liberator going to dive on in, not finding too many more kills. Only 6 in total so far. How many drones have gone down as a result? 7 in total. So not a huge loss, but still losses nonetheless. Cure doesn't want to come away with absolutely nothing, and just a lost mining time in general is really, really effective. So Solar doing a good job of trying to juggle back and forth here, not allowing this main army to get a significant amount of damage done. Did the Liberator end up falling? Yeah, it looks like it did.
Did end up getting sniped by the Queens as, ooh, not the best there with the Widowmine drags from Solar, but it's still going to be able to clean up that position. And I think the real important thing for the Zerg here is that while sure you've lost 10 drones, that Liberator has gotten a ton of value now. Like, I think it racked up 9 in total. You have not been really disturbed in terms of base count. And guess what? Solar's 5th. It is on the way, and so far it's not disturbed. But look at that. Kira says, you think you can take a 5th base when I am playing you? That's not how this works. Solar, as he's going to drop on down, has the Widowmines here. And as you said, it's that double factory, so he has the tanks and the Widowmines. Soon we'll have drilling claws. He's just going to try and push do the double prong harass once again. As the Widowmine shots are good. Managed to find some decent connections, but Cure is not going to be able to cancel that 5th.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big difference between game number 1 and game number 2 is the base counts for Solar are going to be able to continue growing as fast as Solar would like to make that happen. So if he can hang on to this 5th base location, that production's going to be able to spike just a little bit better than it did in game number 1. Now Cure is going to stay on top of his micro, going to get a nice little pickup there and retreat, but that's going to allow Solar, again, the opportunity to get that 5th base up and running and to allow him the opportunity to get some additional tech underway. We've got a Lurker Den, we've got Hive now finished as well, and so many of those tier 3 upgrades are well within sight here for Solar in game number 2.
Yeah, and this certainly feels like a game where you might see those Lurkers come out just a little bit quicker. There is, I believe, not a Ghost Academy yet, is just the 3rd factory being added on for that tank production. And of course, that +1 vehicle weapon should start up after this plating is done. The plating is the better upgrade for Widow Mines, for all you Terran players wondering, who don't know. But Widow Mines, they don't actually deal damage with their weapon. It is a spell, and so they do not benefit from the attack upgrades. While you're mostly on a Widow Mine composition, you're going to want to get the armor, and then as soon as you're transitioning into tanks, you're going to start to add on those vehicle weapons. As Cure, once again, 2 fronts at once, just trying to keep the Zerg back, apply just a little bit of pressure, snipes 2 Overlords, and should just be able to get on out. Takes a few more Baneling connections than he'd like, but overall is going to be able to make his way out with most of that army.
I feel like the army split was actually pretty good for Solar. You had those Hydras on the low ground where they could attack in. Baneling's not quite getting full connections here, but a large chunk of this army does get softened up. That is going to take the base at 3 o'clock position. Oh, the drones are going to be exposed as well, but here come additional Banelings. Really good target firing here by Cure to keep as much of his unit count alive as humanly possible, and that ends up being a slightly better engagement here for the blue Terran player. I mean, if we take a look at the units lost tab, it's a tale of 2 efficiencies here between these 2 players. Cure doing a really nice job of keeping things in line here. Good pickups, good back and forth, not overextending and allowing his opponent to punish him for any casual mistakes, but it also has resulted in Solar being able to secure a little bit stronger base count here in game number 2, and an opportunity to maybe catch this army out, as it is a bit out of position, but Solar not able to run with his entire group at this point. So Baneling's lagging behind a little bit alongside those Hydras, and Cure once again setting up double-pronged aggression on both sides of the map.
Just doing this so well. The additional command centers are going to come down on the 4 bases, and these units streaming in 1 by 1 is not exactly what you want at Solar. Even one of those Widow Mine charges kept alive as the Vipers finally come through, and that means that the right flank is going to get cleaned up. Parasitic Bomb isn't able to quite knock down the medevac, but now we're going to have Solar dive on forward to clean up the rest of that drop, as Cure is going to try and push on the other side. Seesaw and get the creep, and again, just Cure being so good at cleaning up this creep is keeping Solar really contained, but you have to be careful. Planetary Fortress is just enough to deter the Zerg. Solar not going to commit on in. Medevacs get on out on the left side of the map, and it's 3-3 on the way. Ghosts and tanks. Cure, he is getting ready once again for this late game army competition.
Oh, Solar's supply looked at 201 for just a brief moment. It felt like the Matrix had been hacked there for a second, but definitely a fun thing to point out, as we do have nukes on the production tab. What's the current ghost count right now? The ghosts are only now starting to populate at 2, but they are going to come in 4 by 4, which makes a little bit of a bigger difference. Oh, one of those ghosts going to get picked off almost right away. Tank's not quite sieged up. One will end up falling as a result, but it seems like Cure is starting to influence Solar's play just a little bit here, coming in with his own double-pronged aggression on both sides of the map. Oh, a couple of lurkers here, just a bit far forward. He is able to see those, but he just doesn't know that those are units that are morphing on in. Well, that actually, okay, those are going to be able to move right at the very end, so that ends up being okay. Lurkers are going to be the nice natural transition here, as they are going to start picking away at different attack points. Now, we do have one ghost coming in. This is going to be our ghost that is used for some nuke placing, as Cure is going to try and distract this main army on the left-hand side as well. So double-pronged aggression in a slightly different-looking way here, Titan.
Yeah, the nuke should be able to land, and this is going to find quite a bit of value. That's going to be 2 queens and the drone line that's going to go down. Very valuable nuke at the start to start this game off, and immediately another one into production. Cure saying, listen, I only used 1 nuke last game and it didn't actually find any value. why don't I just go more nukes? And I absolutely agree, Kira, but look at this. Solar's committing on in. He says, lurker nerfs what? I don't care. I'm still going to run on in, gets on top of the tank. He's now going to keep pressing this, but ghosts are here. Now the count is not that high, and that's what Solar's looking to take advantage of, but the snipes are coming through, and the lurkers are already knocked down to just the 2. The tanks will fall. The ghosts still have some energy left. Cure taking this engagement step by step so well. He's going to lose. Oh, no, he's going to lose the factory.
I mean, the lurkers are going to continue rotating around, but it's a lot of good damage here. It's not enough, though. Solar wants to continue finding additional damage. Getting on top of these tanks with some lings is very good, valuable tricks that he can get placed here. +3 missile on the way for Solar. I mean, Cure is rapidly approaching his upgrade paradise here. He's got 3-3 on the bio. He has 2-1 on his mech units. And it's going to be mostly tanks at this point, so I wouldn't be surprised to see +3 come out as well. But it seems like he is slowly starting to stabilize with maybe a more turtled approach here. Additional missile turrets being added in at the front lines. We've got Planetary Fortress at the outer lying locations. And another Ghost going to try and kill off a few more workers. But it does seem like the pull is going to be way in time here this time around.
Solar has seen, he knows the nuke is there. It will manage to cancel an Overseer Cocoon. And so, hey, value 100 for that Overseer, I think is pretty worthwhile. But overall, you're going to have Kira in a very comfortable position. He's at 5 bases. Of course, the Zerg is looking to get up to, at this point, 7 of his own, but this is just naturally how the late game is going to look, as the Widowmine's not getting the best connection just yet, and Solar looks like he's found another opening once again. Ooh, Lurker's going to try and burrow forward, but they're just not quite close enough, and honestly, at this point, those Banelings rolling into the Planetary might not have been a bad idea. Instead, just going to go for the mineral line. Actually, doesn't even commit to the mineral line. There we go, finally does a nice load and unload from Cure to save as many as he possibly can, and burrowed Lurker harass. It's been, you know, Rushi, this is one thing that I didn't miss from when lurkers were in every single game.
See, I'm sitting here going like, this is fantastic. I love this choice by Solar. I mean, it's one of those anything you can do, I can do better moments. You want to harass my bases at the outer skirts on the opposite side of the map of your main army? Well, I will do the same. I'll push your right-hand base and then drop a single lurker on the left-hand side just to keep you off center. But it looks like Solar is doing a decent job here trying to keep himself moving forward. Cure taking this base here in the top left-hand corner of the map. Not going to be able to repair it in just enough time that it's going to get picked off, but it is going to be reverse damage on the other side as well. But Solar going to try and push on forward, not worried about those outskirt bases any longer, wants to find some actual economic damage here, and it seems like this Planetary Fortress will end up falling.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of Banelings committed in, but you get a pretty good trade, and is also maybe going to be able to cancel that base, but is going to lose a lot of lurkers for it. He does manage to also clean up the units that killed off his base in the bottom right-hand side. As Solar, I mean, he's in a great spot in this game, but he is running out. He's not being able to build up the bank. I think the big thing, Solar, he commits in to kill a base, but because you did that, suddenly your supply is knocked back down. You're going to have to rebuild Zerglings and Banelings. You're going to have to rebuild your lurkers that you lost. And so Solar, even though he's at, this massive, I think right now, 8-base economy, you're not seeing him get up this massive mineral and gas bank. Now it should start to build as he maxes out and as he's now just looking to kind of sit back and defend the pressure that Cure is throwing out. Of course, for Cure, is just looking for cancels. Kills on hatcheries is, of course, worthwhile. These units he's going to replace with tanks, ghosts, and liberators, so he's not too sad about just throwing a few Marines and Mars across the map to distract his opponent.
Well, and that's 4 hatcheries that have gone down as kills in this game. So that is not insignificant damage for Cure. Solar's finding himself having to recover from that as well, but he is slowly starting to work on his bank, and this is going to make things more complicated here for Cure. The orbital command did have to be floated from a different location, and that is now having to be run away, but the tanks are not surviving. That means the ghosts are going to be all by themselves here. Titan, they have nowhere to retreat to.
Yeah, and I mean, it's because, Cure at the same time, he's trying to take another base, so he has all of his tanks over there. That means that Solar is just going to continue to run this through. And that means that Solar, I mean, it looks like he should be able to take this game. Cure trying his hardest, but it just does not feel like it is going to work out. Solar, he found the opening, and again, it's the strength of staying on a low lurker count. You can just roll through with the Zerglings and the Banelings, and that is all it takes for Solar to tie us up.
Now, Berlingrad, I think, is an interesting map, especially for ZVT right now. I enjoy all of the different styles of play that we can get out of this, but I especially like it for this matchup. If both players decide to yield for the similar type of play that they brought in game number 1 and 2, I mean, Berlingrad's going to be perfect for some nice standard bio play leading into maybe a little bit more involved, like Mutiling Bane, if Solar wants to go down that path once again. But this ends up being a map that we see a little bit of, but sometimes it does get a little bit interesting for this particular reason as well. Cure already working down the minerals at the ramp is going to give maybe an indicator that Cure wants to get a little bit aggressive here in game number 3.
Yeah, and that's the unique part of Berlingrad. The rush distance is already pretty short from third base to third base, but you get rid of those minerals and suddenly it's looking a lot more like, I mean, like, what, 10 seconds, if not less. It is incredibly short to get across the map on this. And that means that really is, oh, that's a big catch. That should not happen. Solar is going to lose the first drone here. And that definitely hurts. It's going to delay the hatchery for a little bit. You already lose a drone this early in the game. Is never something that a Zerg wants to have happen. So Cure, I mean, you're already going to be happy with the value that the Reaper has gotten.
Yeah, it's a huge victory here for Cure in the short term. And I think in the long term, I mean, forcing out the triangle location for the third does make things a little bit easier from a harassment standpoint. This Reaper's going to be really, really useful in trying to navigate this position, although it's going to be careful here. Ling's in a really, really good spot as well. But if Cure decides to go for that early, maybe 16 Marine to medevac harassment in the early onsets of the game, this ledge can become a really important attacking point for him, as he can get some really good damage done in the main while keeping an impressive look over at the third base as well.
Yeah, this is going to be, I mean, I think it's a really good build choice for this map. The 2-in-1, it's not a build that you can do on every map because, of course, it has kind of become, I think, how do I put it? Every Zerg knows how to deal with the 2-1-1. It's kind of been drilled into Zerg's brains that this is how you deal with the 2-1-1. And so I really do. I'm interested to see how much damage you can get done, but also I'm a bit like, is this really going to work? Because Solar, especially, is a player who's so solid that he should know how to deal with this. But of course, the thing is, I don't think he actually has any scouting on it. His Overlord is not very far forward. He hasn't committed that Overlord into the main, and so he's not actually going to be able to see anything until his Marines come across the map.
Well, I mean, there is a really, really good Overlord right here for Solar. We'll get a good glimpse at the Marine count here. It is at 12. There is that double medevac popping out right now. And yeah, this is going to be a great 2-1-1 timing that Solar is going to have to really work hard to defend against. The Baneling Nest is in production, but it's been mostly drones in the production tab here for the Zerg player, who is going to try and take his lair at the same time. Queens located all up at the front here are going to be good at harassing against the medevacs, but they have to be very, very careful they don't succumb to the power of these Marines. And now we are going to see the work that Cure did early on in the game, paying off just a little bit, forcing Solar to at least split his army up and guard on a couple of different fronts here. But now that Banelings are on the way, the Baneling Nest is completed, I think the lair is going to be given an opportunity to do its thing and advance Solar into the later stages of the game. So far, relatively unscathed.
Yeah, I mean, Solar being able to really hold on. Again, this is, I think, the one thing on the 2-1-1 where obviously it's good to get pressure on the map. Solar being able to fully deflect all of that now means that his third base is going to be sitting very healthily at 55 drones. The fourth should be on the way soon. I actually think the fourth for Solar is quite late, and I actually think he might have overproduced Lings here. is going to be adding on 20 more. But that's just to make sure that, of course, he can find a surround onto this army. As you see those lings looping around the bottom side, he wants to try and clean this up with one fell swoop. But it also does mean that that's going to take quite a toll on his macro, because behind this, well, Cure is going to have that third command center ready. And so for Solar, I'm not entirely sure exactly how this is going to work out. You see, he's not really committing in with the lings just yet, even though he has that flank set up. So it's just looking like I think Cure is going to just be able to pick on up, get on out, and Solar made, I think, overmade lings here.
Well, he definitely overmade them if he's not going to find any way to utilize them, and they're not running across the map right now. They're still playing defense back at home, so that's the best possible opportunity that Cure can wrangle here from Solar. So as a result, he's going to be able to get his third base set down into place. Continues to keep Solar under pressure here. Finally, one of those medevacs does go down. I'm surprised Solar doesn't take the opportunity to try and jump in while there is a little less retreat potential. But once again, doesn't want to overextend off of creep. That hatchery is going to be placed down at the fourth base location, so working on his own macro as well. But a very, very delayed +1 melee attack. Carapace did get started, but it seems like maybe Solar didn't quite have the overhead to get that +1 melee going as well. So that's going to take a little bit of time and have a bit of a small impact here in the middle section of the game.
Yeah, absolutely is. This is a nice little push that Cure is preparing on the right side of the map. Of course, it is unbeknownst to Solar until these tanks are sieged up, and this is a nice position. You can actually hit the extractor from here, so you're going to stop at least that gas mining, and you'll be able to support the entirety of your army. Now, the worry is, once again, Solar has this, surround set up, and this is why you make so many lings. Of course, it does mean that his fourth is very late. You know, this fourth base is coming up at 8 minutes, and that's what's going to get saturated, which does hurt as a Zerg. You want that a lot sooner, but you clean up this push completely. You're not really going to be worrying about any chance of Cure being across the map and finding damage, even as this drop makes its way into the main. Well, should have units being able to reposition. Cure, though, is going to just dive on in. Look how quickly that layer goes down. Actually, oh, Solar was not ready for this. The layer is going to fall, and that's why you made so many units, is to stop that damage from happening.
Yeah, that's a crucial amount of damage here for Cure to secure. No pun intended there. But once again, Solar's got to find a way to capitalize on all of these units. He's spent so much of his opportunity trying to get enough units to really punish his opponent, who still somehow has additional units above and beyond Solar's current count as well. But now he's having to recover a base. The macro hatch does go down. That could provide at least some inefficient mining at that main expansion, and that seems to be the case that's going to happen here. But it's been so long since Solar has seen the opposite side of the map. He's really being pinched back by Cure's efforts here, and big props to Cure, as it is giving him an opportunity to advance further forward in this game, getting those better upgrades and starting to get positioned for a fourth base.
Yeah, Solar finally has his fourth mining, and is going to be able to use that to start to swell his army to hopefully a larger count than that of his opponent, as the support crawler will reposition just to make sure that that drop can't find its way into the main. But again, Cure is just, he's playing clinical Terran with this double prong pressure. This is how Terran, this is what you want to do. This is every Terran's dream. They see this, when they fall asleep and they've had a good day, and they're like, ah, yes, the double pronged harass. This is how it should look. And Cure is just doing it so well. He's macroing behind. He's at 72 workers to the 80 of Solar. And, there's mules that are possible for the Terran. This is a situation where a base behind, but only down 8 workers. You are very happy, and the 5th base is just going to get canceled preemptively by Solar.
This is really, really good for Cure. This is what really secured the advantage for him in game number 1, was preventing that 5th base from ever getting fully secured. And right now, Cure doing a really nice job of making that happen here in game number 3. Solar has to find a better way to really get this base up and running. Now, kind of boxing in these units out in the dead space is nice and all, but there's nothing that's really going to be able to deal with that at this current moment. They are both supply maxed right now, so the opportunity to find additional units that can go and engage on this is going to be a bit more difficult, especially since there is no Spire on the map at this current point. So it's just going to be a large amount of Ling, Bane, and a Hydra. The transition into Lurkers will be starting here rather soon, but again, that's going to do very little against the imminent threat from Cure as he continues to have these medevacs everywhere on the map.
Yeah, and Ling, Bane, Hydra, I mean, there's a reason why you don't see it very often. Of course, you want this to eventually be turning into Lurkers, and the Ling, Bane, Hydra is good when you are being aggressive, when you're the one taking trades, but when you're on the defense, these units, they're not really able to find consistent values. The Banelings rolling on in are going to be able to get a good connection on the Marines. The tank line is very, very deep, though, for Curie. He's going to be able to at least find a decent trade here on the back end. The Banelings, though, finding quite a bit of value. The Hydras will be able to clean up the rest of it. And those medevacs still trapped here at the top of the map. A single Hydralisk is all that's keeping them there, but it just feels like Cure, okay, it's finally going to move them on over, and then says, no, actually, I don't want to do that, and they're just going to keep, I mean, it's a good solid chunk of his army that's right now in these medevacs, so does need to, I think, at some point attempt to get them on out. And here we go up onto the high ground. The Lings and Banes are already there. Solar, so good at just having units prepared around his bases now that he's started to get into a better macro position. Sitting at 5 bases, taking that 6th, and the 7th going to try and catch up to where he wants to be, as Adrenal Glands is on the way with the +3/+3, and that was the big issue that we saw in the game 1 that Solar lost. He didn't actually have Adrenal Glands for his Ling Bane, or for his Zerglings, and he was sticking on the Ling Bane Hydra for an extended period of time, and this is exactly what he's going to do here. He needs the efficiency and the ability to split his army and find these trades with the Banelings, and the Lurkers don't necessarily offer that, especially because if Cure does decide to, kind of group his army as he is doing now, well, then the Lurkers wouldn't be altogether that useful against the tanks.
Well, that was a bit of a missed moment there for Solar. It seemed like Solar had other chores on his mind here, trying to clear out some debris rather than dealing with the army that was pressuring his top right-hand base. But there's plenty of units here, 2-2 on all of the bio, +2 for the tanks as well. So you might have just said, well, I'll try and get something else done in the meantime. But the 5th base now finally secured for Solar. He's going to have to find a way to engage against this army, though. Really nice blinding cloud here on the tanks on the middle portion of this army. It's going to allow him to clean up the tank up on the high side as well. So the tanks are a bit further back than they otherwise need to be to push on forward. But this push isn't quite done just yet. There are a few Banelings here, but not a whole lot of Zerglings to really body block for these Banes to get on in. And Hydras are not the kinds of units that you want to body block against the bio, because Banelings are useful, but they're not going to be that useful if you don't have any follow-up army back behind it. Nice little pull here by the Viper is going to clean up one of those tanks. Maybe there it finally does go. But Solar is just trying to hold off the Eminent Force right now, but Cure already with other things in mind. Nukes again on the way, and the transition into Ghost has already begun.
Oh, and I love this small little counterattack is going to be able to knock down a hatchery. I mean, we saw that Solar tried to do the same. Zerglings, Banelings, and a few Hydralisks going across the map, but Cure was ready, and he even just snipes that base. Solar should never allow that to happen when he has the units there to deal with that army. And this damage is starting to get quite ridiculous from Cure with just these small groups of units as well. Not even his main army, which is still back at home and ready to secure himself a 5th or a 6th base, sorry, as he already has the 5th established, but this might just go down to these Zerglings and Banelings, which have finally managed to crash through that tank line.
Yeah, this is starting to look like a lost base here for Cure, and that is going to be the case. But the focus, once again, is on the opposite side of the map. Cure doing an impeccable job here in game number 3, holding Solar to a limited number of bases and just stymieing any production that he would like to try and get on top of, plus just the income advantage as well. I mean, we're seeing a nice solid bank here for Cure and a limited amount of resources available for Solar. And for somebody who is relying as heavily on Ling Bane as Solar is, he absolutely needs the additional production structures, but even more so, he's got to have access to that economy to outflood his opponent. And right now, he's really struggling to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, Cure is in a great spot in this game. He has a bank. Solar does not. And again, I said, these lurkers, they're useful, but when you're in such a scrappy game, you don't really have the units that you need to protect them against the tank, against the Marauders, and so you're going to see a lot of them go down. That's money that Solar is not really going to be able to replace. He's finally going to bring his whole army over to deal with this flank, but as you said, Cure is just doing such a good job of seesawing the map every single time. His army hits in one spot, Solar responds to that, and then suddenly he has the rest of his army on the other side. And Solar can never have enough units to respond to one side at once because the strength of Ling Bane is not in being split up. The strength of Ling Bane is actually in just the straight up fight. But at this point, honestly, you might have lost so much that the straight up fight doesn't even look that convincing anymore.
Yeah, this is a good pushback here for Solar, but he's not going to have enough to be able to stop every single piece of this army for Cure. A couple of lurkers are going to be able to hold things back in the short term, but now we're starting to get ghosts incorporated in. There are 7 on the units tab right now, and with a sizable amount of medevacs, this is going to be a nice amount of support to assault this base. Once again, Bailey's going to come rolling on in, and on a creep, they're going to be very versatile, but tank in the background going to be nice in helping that out. Some decent focus fire, and it's just too much. The nuke finally pushes things down, and a Cure is going to advance on to Season 2 of the Code S. Well done for the Terran player.